non-proliferation and trade is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The best way to mourn our heroes is to avoid the tendency here in Washington to politicize things and to look at Dr. Califano's approach of cost-benefit. We've got to do everything possible so that we have the maximum State Department effectiveness while the minimum risk to our personnel. And the most fitting way to honor our heroes is to have a hearing that's designed to do just that and to fix the problem to the extent it can be fixed. And this hearing, I think, has done a lot of that. It's also had some unnecessary political attacks. They call it the fog of war for a reason, but the military is designed to deal with the fog of war. To think that you always get it right when you're subject to a warlike attack and you're not even a war-fighting operation is absurd. Ambassador Susan Rice has done an outstanding job. Yes, she presented to us the intelligence provided to her by the intelligence community. I would point out that many State Department officials came into this room and presented the intelligence community's views on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That does not is not a reason to criticize those who are presenting. And what strikes me as utterly bizarre, because I understand politics perhaps better than those of you who focus on foreign policy, is in what bizarre universe is there political gain by trying to convince the American people that there aren't armed terrorist groups in the most lawless cities in the Middle East? No one attempted to convince the American people of that. No one tried to say, oh no, something like, you know, we couldn't have an Al-Qaeda type group operating. But also, in what bizarre universe is it politically helpful to tell the American people that any old YouTube could be a spark on a tinderbox that causes thousands of Muslims in the Middle East to charge into our armed security, giving up their own lives in a few cases because they're so angry at a YouTube? I would say that would be an even more dangerous world, to think that that would be reflective of any significant portion of opinion on the Arab street. The fact is we do have both problems. There are armed terrorist groups and there are thousands of people who hate us a lot, and the slightest provocation or YouTube video can set them off. Dr. Califano, and perhaps others will answer this as well. We had in Benghazi a situation where perhaps dozens of well-armed attackers went to our diplomatic facility. The host country didn't provide significant help for many, many hours. Is there any plan? I mean, I realize in Iraq we have the most enormous embassy in the world, but assuming we're dealing with what could possibly be done in consulates and temporary diplomatic facilities in secondary seats in relatively small countries, the secondary cities of small countries, is there anything we can do that would allow us to deal with dozens of well-armed, planned, a coordinated attack while not getting any help from the host government for many hours?
You know, Congressman, you raised a really excellent point, and I think from the publicly available information, I think your conclusion is reasonable, that given the level of security that was available, even adding people wouldn't have been sufficient to mitigate the risk of that base being overrun. I think that appears to be a very reasonable and accurate conclusion. But that's why I laid out the 4 questions, because then you have to ask the other questions was, given that that's a very reasonable conclusion, and we knew that beforehand, was whatever people were doing, was what they were being there so important that running that risk was valid? And if it was, we never leave people alone. So if that was going to happen, and the worst case scenario did happen, did we think through, and again, I can't tell this in publicly available information, how are we going to deal with that? And did we act on our contingency plans? So again, that's why I laid out the stress of we need the answers to all 4 of the questions to really draw prudent conclusions.
I don't know if any other witness has a strong desire to answer that question. And I know
we're
that my
out of-
time has
Thank you.
expired, so
Thank you
regardless
so
of what
much,
that
Mr. Sherman,
strong view
and thank
is.
you, Ms. Schmidt, and thank you to our witnesses for excellent testimony and good answers. And our committee looks forward to continuing to examine the risks that our U.S. personnel undertake as they're deployed to dangerous environments, and the risk inherent in operating in places like Benghazi, compounded by